Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. I'm DV LeBron. Today, my very special guest is Mr. Roger Friedman, who is the author of Erasing America, Broken Politics, Broken Country. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, DV. Thanks for having me tonight.
You know, I was so grateful for you sending me this book, and I was reading through it and just seeing what came to this idea, and I can't wait to start covering and getting into that. But I wanted you to tell the audience more about you.
Well, let's see. If I go back about 68 years, I'm a middle class kid from the Lower East Side of Manhattan. My dad was an entrepreneur. He took over his parents' laundry, which was right near Times Square. And my mom passed when I was 12, and I was a bit of a handful. And my sister, she was great. My brother was great, but I was the handful. So dad always wanted me to come to the store after I did my homework to hang out under his watchful eye and to be there all summer as well to make sure that I didn't get into any trouble.
Yeah.
And that did a couple things. Number one, I was never arrested, so I think that's a positive.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. I put that in the pro column.
No, nobody wants to go to scene.
Exactly. Well, with me, it would have been Rikers Island.
Yes.
You've heard the stories about that.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
Number two, as much as I hated being at Norton's Laundry and Dry Cleaning, my work ethic was born there.
Oh, wow.
I saw how my dad worked effectively, efficiently, and intelligently. When he took over my grandparents' laundry, I think there was one woman with the washboard. You remember the washboards?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Okay. Kind of came after the rock. Okay. And during the height of the 70s and 80s, he had 45 employees. He had a fleet of trucks. He did laundry and dry cleaning for rich folk at Trump Tower, the Broadway theaters, which were right down the block from the store, hospitals, and other laundries and dry cleaning that didn't have their own machines. So I got to do the deliveries. I learned how to drive before I had a license. And the fact that I said, but Dad, I don't have a driver's license, he said, get downtown in 10 minutes. We'll worry about the license later. So, but I saw how he had a spiral notebook or a yellow pad at times on his desk, and he always wrote down the most important things that needed to be accomplished the next day. And he prioritized them, A, B, and C. So I got a very early lesson in goal setting. I didn't know it at the time, but it was logged in my brain what I saw him doing. And years later, when I read a book by Donald Trump, and yes, I read all of Donald Trump's books, he had a spiral notebook on his desk every day where he had a gigantic to-do list that he prioritized it. Now, here's the question. Did my dad get it from Donald, or did Donald get it from my dad? I don't know.
Don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. But I'll go with the fact that he got it from Andy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
That's awesome. No, and one of the things that I could point to is that the first 10 years of my life basically was in New York. And the life lessons that I learned in New York I'm 47 years old now, and I remember them. They're still in there. Those things got with me, and they'll never leave me. How did those life lessons influence you? Because your book, I mean, there's satirical stuff, and you keep it light and funny, but you're talking about very real subjects. So how does what you learned on that Lower East Side get you to where you're at?
Well, if I didn't put humor in it, you'd cry. Okay. And no one wants to pick up a book. Okay, it's time to cry.
Yeah, that wouldn't sell very well.
So I went to Seward Park High School, which I never thought of as famous until one day I Googled were there any famous people that went there? Zero Mostel, Tony Curtis,
Oh.
Jerry Stiller, and Ethel and what's his name, Rosenberg, the nuclear spies.
Oh no, the
They went to my high
Rosenbergs.
school.
Yeah.
Not obviously not at the same time I did.
Right.
Okay. But I'm like, wow, we have some famous people that went there.
Yeah.
But I remember, I grew up in Stuyvesant Town, which was created for the returning servicemen from World War II. It was owned and operated by MetLife Insurance. And it was kind of like a park-like setting with 80 buildings, each 12 stories tall, that looked exactly alike, with playgrounds interspersed. And if the number of the building wasn't on there, you couldn't find your way home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I was lucky that I had a grandma on the Upper East Side and a grandma on the Upper West Side. And Dad made me work my ass off for my 10-speed bicycle,
Yeah.
which cost like $125, which was
Ooh.
like $1 million at the time.
Yeah, that was.
And I was able to ride to my grandma's. But I remember at the time we had phone booths. I had a pocket full of dimes, if you remember that. You
Yeah.
get in trouble, you better have a dime in your pocket.
Yeah.
Call grandma or dad. I remember being on the subway by myself at 10 years old.
Yep.
I wouldn't let a 10-year-old near the subway entrance now.
No. My son would have died if he did
Yeah,
anything.
I grew up on the subways,
Yeah.
kind of like you did. But it was a great place to grow up. New York was very different in the 60s and 70s. Now I pride myself that I will not step foot in the state.
Yeah.
Nor will I step foot in Minnesota, Oregon, California, Vermont, and Chicago.
That's a lot of not stepping foot.
I won't go there.
But I don't
won't put any of my hard-earned money in those politicians' pockets.
I don't, and I still got family in California. I don't go back there.
You make them visit you.
Yes, I try to get them to visit me. But so, I went and I started reading through your book. And one day you said, look, I got to get these things out. Like I got these thoughts about things and I got to get these out. And you had like a little memo thing that you were putting out. So the book is like different memos, all these different memos of sections of where and you cover everything from AOC to, you cover Trump court cases, you even cover some and your equal opportunity. There's some things where you're slapping Fox News and you're covering all these things about the book. So first I'll go into why did you write the book?
Well, when I came to, first of all, to back up a little, the dumbest decision I ever made, and I have made some beauties, was to spend 4 years as a political science major.
Oh.
That was a poor decision on my part. So I went to State University of New York, between two snowballs, between Rochester and Buffalo. And it was one of the very few schools that actually invited me. When I got my decline letter from Berkeley and Harvard, I framed those fuckers. I was proud of it. But being a poli-sci major and then figuring out I hated politics, because I actually spent one semester on the Washington semester program. And I worked in a committee in Congress, and these people couldn't decide what kind of bagels to get for the meeting.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was horse trading, whether sesame, poppy, onion, or everything.
If you get sesame seed.
We elected these people.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So fast forward to when I left Maryland after 30 years and moved down to Florida. I remember reading, I used the term reading the paper. You and I grew up reading the paper.
There was such thing.
We probably don't read the paper anymore. We kind of scan the media, but I call it reading the paper. Okay.
Yes, it's still reading the paper, sort of.
So I'm reading the paper, and I see some things and I wrote about it, that just turned my head around. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And I was seeing that Republicans were coming forth with secure the border, law and order. The Constitution is the law of the land. Judges and the SEC and the Education Department and the Energy Department are not permitted to make law. At least that's what our founding documents tell us. And I felt that I couldn't keep this nonsense in. So I took to my Mac, which I call my typewriter, and I started writing a one-page memo. And I'm not the brightest bulb in the world. I called it the Sunday memo because I did it on Sundays.
Yeah.
And I sent it to friends and family, a couple of colleagues, and I got my rant out for the day. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. No, that's exactly. Yes.
And everyone kind of liked it. And they gave me comments and so on and so forth. By the way, I still do the Sunday memo. It's now called, we've gone uptown now.
Yeah,
it's now called the Equal Opportunity Times.
It's so fancy.
I said that it's very fancy. Thank you very much. It goes out twice a month for free. And if your listeners go to eocritic.com, like Equal Opportunity Critic, they could sign up for the Equal Opportunity Times, and I'll send it to them until they squeal stop. Okay. But I started doing the memo, and I got a lot of good feedback. And then it occurred to me, DV, I couldn't keep it at one page. There was too much nonsense going on. And so it became around 1,500 words, 3.5 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And after I did about 38 or 40 of them, my sister Diane, God love her, said, you got enough for a book here.
Yeah.
And that didn't come out of the blue because Erasing America is my 7th book.
Yes.
Most of my other books are on retirement planning and wealth management, which is what my career has been for the last 40 years. Okay.
Yes.
This is my first delve into politics. But when she said that, I hadn't even considered writing another book. But then when I got to number 47 or 48 after 48 weeks, I was like, holy shit, I got enough for a book. Yeah. And you'll see I didn't call them chapters.
No,
I called them memos because that's what they were.
They're all memos. And then, you go into everything. Like you had New England freezes without Trinidad.
Yeah.
You go into everything.
Because DV, there's something called the Marcellus Shale. I don't know how many of your viewers or listeners have ever heard of the Marcellus Shale, but it is subterranean shale in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, New York, around there, and it holds 1 trillion barrels of natural gas and natural gas liquids, enough for 100 years to power this country. Yet New England, Boston in particular, will not build a 400-mile pipeline to get cheap natural gas. Instead, they have it shipped in by ships from Trinidad at $6 instead of $1.89.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is all the politicians, not in my backyard.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's another example of this. So California, there was an article about California finally reaching these crazy goals with alternative energy, right? What they did, that's cute.
Windmills, yes.
Windmills and solar panels, right?
Yeah.
But what people don't talk about, what they don't talk about is basically they started closing down all their power. Things that made power in the state, they closed it down. But they didn't build anything to make up for. Yeah, they built a few windmills, but to make up for that capacity, they didn't do it. What they did was they started buying power from the open market, coming in from the other states from the coal-fired power plants. But they weren't doing it, so they were eco-friendly. Meanwhile, your light bill was $600 and some odd because you were purchasing it from an open market. So that was like the dirty little secret, and this kind of falls into that. It's the dirty little.
Yeah, I have a client in California. down to 3,000 square feet, and his electric bill monthly was $700.
It's just bad. It's really bad.
It's ridiculous.
So you cover the thing, and I love this part about this book, that you cover very serious, like I said earlier, you cover very serious topics, and you do it in a pithy way. And you do it, yeah, you know, you
never
do,
called me
yeah,
pithy.
yeah, it's a, you know, and it's a, you have such a way of covering these things that you'll either get a chuckle or you realize the
Thank you.
absurdity of
Yeah,
what the
I'm
event
trying to
is.
point out the absurd. You're absolutely right.
Yes. So talk to me on, because it is broken politics, broken country.
Would
And
you
in
like
this
an
book,
example?
well, obviously, yes.
Okay. So there are 3 letters in the English language that by themselves, they're inoffensive. A matter of fact, I use them all the time. But when you put the 3 of them together, I feel dirty, I get nauseous, and I want to take a shower. Can you guess what those 3 letters are?
What is it?
A, O, and C. Okay. That spells asshat. Okay. Okay. So this asshat in 2019, and yes, she's a congresswoman. I'm sure her parents are very proud of her. Be that as it may, she put forth a House bill in 2019. It was House Bill number 5071. And the name of it was something for a just society. And not to get into the weeds, but the bill called for the federal government providing payments to all people in the United States, regardless of their residency or citizenship. And said benefits were health, education, welfare. Let me break that down a little. Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, free college education, universal basic income. Are you sick to your stomach yet?
It's ridiculous.
This is for illegal aliens. Now tell me, if you put up a sign at the southern border saying you could have all this free shit, how many illegal aliens are going to cross the border not caring that the first thing that they did when they stepped across the border was to commit a felony? My guess is about 1 billion. What do you think?
Well, they're trying to get to that number.
Yeah.
They're trying to get to that number.
Yeah.
I mean,
these illegal aliens will be so grateful
yes,
that they eventually had a path to citizenship, that they will all become Democrats. They will all vote Democratic, and we will then have one party rule until America goes down the toilet.
in perpetuity.
In perpetuity.
In perpetuity,
Yeah.
definitely. And, you know, it's like even today, it came out the news that by stroke of a pen, they expanded the parole powers.
I saw that.
By stroke of a pen. Now, you know,
during the DNC. Yes.
Yeah, of course they did. One of the things that I saw recently, a decision that gave me hope in that maybe we could turn this around, the Chevron decision.
Yes.
And I thought something like this was going to get smacked up because of the Chevron decision. At least that's me being Pollyanna. I'm thinking.
No, executive departments do not have the authority to make law. And I will be very happy when President Trump shuts down the Department of Education that should never have been created in the first place. That is a power that belongs to the states.
Education should be local at all times. It should be local. You know, it's how do you get to, because it's a broken country, how do we get to sanity? Is it through books like this, or approaching it with the way that you approach it in kind of a funny yet, you know, it's so absurd manner? How do you get to a better country?
There's 2 words, they're basically the same: engagement, involvement.
Oh, I love this.
So I wrote the book not to make money. If you buy the book for $20 and I get $6.12, and I pay tax and I end up with $4.52, it's not going to change my life. Okay.
Right.
But what I was trying to do was to get people off of the couch. When I moved to my area of Florida, I joined several Republican clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the meetings. I met with my congresswoman last week. Okay. I give to the candidates, especially for school board, which has become more important now than ever, as you're aware.
Here in Texas too.
Yeah. So I become involved. I give of my time. I give money to make sure that the appropriate people are in office and that the idiots are voted out of office. Okay. And also, my dad served in the Army Air Force. He was in the Rhine Valley. He was in England. I think he actually went to Bakersfield for a little while also. God knows what he did there.
Yeah.
But I never served. So when I was walking in my new town, I walked into the Chamber of Commerce and I see a brochure for the Sons of the American Legion, which I'd never even heard of before. And I'm like, what's that? Well, if your mom or dad was in the military, you qualify. So I read about it. I went down. I gave them money. I got a membership. Every month, I helped them with a grill, grilling hot dogs and hamburgers, on Friday night to raise money. The other day, on Tuesday, we gave over $12,000 to the Special Olympics. And I'm happy to be a part of the organization because, as it was explained to me, is our goal is to raise a lot of money so we can give it all away. I mean, I couldn't think of anything better. Could you?
No, that's fantastic. Getting involved voting is abysmal. When you look at even the last election, you get down to you're electing one of these local officials by, 800 votes, maybe 1,000 votes out of a vote. Let's say, because it's let's say the population is 40,000, maybe it's 21,000 that are adult eligible voters, right?
Right.
Out of 21,000,
5,000 people vote.
You might get 1,000 voting. And that's sickening.
Yeah, people have to get off the couch. They have to become engaged and involved.
They definitely do. Yeah. What do you hope this book does? Let's say the book just goes on fire and everybody starts. What do you hope people get out of this?
I hope, and I really do hope it's before November. I really hope that people are going to look at the book and go, holy shit, I had no idea it was this bad. And things have to change. And I'm going to talk to my friends, my family, my colleagues, and I'm going to urge them to get off their couches, become involved, and vote conservative.
Yeah. And get off the couch and do something. You guys can get his book. And then I'm going to try to go ahead and share a screen real quick. You guys can get his book at Amazon, where you get just about everything. You can get his book. And then for some reason, it went into the reviews. But his book is on Amazon. So,
yes, and it was a bestseller. I don't know for how long.
And it's a great book, and I enjoyed reading it. On my show, my guest always gets the last word. So I'm going to shut up and give you the mic.
Well, DV, I want to thank you for being an excellent host, for asking great questions, and for helping me have a great time on a Friday night. I appreciate you. And
thank you, sir. I appreciate your time. Can you stick around after the show real quick?
I sure can.
Thank you.